Hey, Bianca, Natasha. Yes, this meeting in D.C. was not on the mayor's public schedule today, and it took his team hours this morning to even confirm that he had already left the state. The mayor posting this picture of his meeting with President Donald Trump. Mamdani's team says that he brought with him that fake Daily News cover that the president is holding on the left side. During their first meeting in November, the president told Mamdani to come back next time with a housing proposal, and Mamdani did. According to his team, Mamdani pitched a 12,000-unit apartment project. His team refused to release any details, but sources tell us the project would be in Queens. As you heard in Sharon Crowley's report, the mayor's team also said that Mamdani brought up the Columbia student who is detained by ICE, as well as a list of other students who have been detained. Now, Mamdani has been open that he texts back and forth with the president regularly and was asked just yesterday, before his trip was announced, about his discussions with the president.
I'll keep the conversations that I have with the president private. I will tell you, however, that whenever they do happen, they always focus on how to better our city.
Now, this meeting was set up days ago, but his team still refusing to tell the press until mid-afternoon. His team won't tell us when the mayor will be back in the city. First Deputy Mayor Dean Foulahan is acting mayor while Mamdani is gone. He's supposed to be back later tonight. Just don't know exactly when. Bianca, Natasha?
All right, then, Morgan, thanks so much.